Welcome, Kyle. I'm so excited to hear about your story and your grant writing journey today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's start off. Who is Kyle? Why did you decide to learn grants? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, Kyle Werkerly, I was interested in grants for a while, kind of on and off. But to be honest, when it was first told to me or explained to me, I kind of brushed it off like that's not really what I wanted to do. I was much younger then. I hadn't had kids yet. And this was like a big name career counselor that I was talking to. I happened to get 20 minutes of her time and I was like,
Oh,
what
sweet.
should I do? Because I'd been out of college, I think, for about a year or two, and I managed to get like 20 minutes of this person's time. I just think she was doing like free career counseling. And she had said, well, why don't you look into grant writing if you really like writing? I was kind of, not really. And then 2 or 3 years later I started kicking myself because I went into ghostwriting, and like
Okay.
ghostwriting is where you kind of write for somebody else in their voice. You kind of handle the whole writing process and publishing and all that. But I wasn't finding traction because San Antonio, even though we're the seventh largest city in the nation, we're not a big like publishing city or a marketing city, so it's hard to really get traction there. And then, of course, I had kids, there was a pandemic and all that, and so that made me really reevaluate what I wanted, and really look into grant writing seriously. And then when I was able to finally get that opportunity to look more seriously into the Learn Grant Writing program and the Unicorn Grant Writing Collective, I was in a better mindset, I guess I should say, to do that. And also other people had suggested to me, you should look into grant writing. It's really a lot of transferable skills from your
Yeah.
ghostwriting to your grant writing, and I think that would help. By chance, I ran into a nonprofit consultant, and
Oh,
I said, "Well,
sweet.
I'm trying to get ghostwriting up on the side." She goes, "Ghostwriting? Have you thought about grant writing?" And at that time, I was more receptive to the idea, and she was a huge help too for helping me get me into this field and get me this job. So yeah, a lot of those pieces went into that to get me here today.
I love that. So beyond writing, was there anything I'm curious, in either the nonprofit coach or that original career coach that you got the 20 minutes with, that they said, grant writing might be a fit for you beyond just the writing? Were there other skills in there that were highlighted?
Yeah, like project management was a big one that was listed because, to be honest, even though we were writers, I'd say that most 40% of our time is actual writing. The rest of that is, tracking down grants to see if they have alignment, following up, reporting, just making sure all the pieces are where they're at, and we're staying on track with our project and our timeline and all that. So project management was a big one. And like I said, when I was younger, I just was like, I don't really want to do project management. I don't think it's a good fit for me. Then I had kids, and you really have to be able to juggle things. So after having kids, I felt more confident in my project management skills. Not that I would say I'm a pro or anything. It's just like, if my kids are still alive, then I think that's a good enough reason for me to handle a project. Because if the project dies, it's a project.
Mhm.
My child, that's a totally different story. So I'm like, okay, we're good there. So let's keep going with that.
I
Um,
love that.
and then some like budgeting, they mentioned
Mhm,
budgeting.
mhm,
And
mhm.
while I'm not an accounting mind per se, and I'm not very good at math, but it's like, if you can kind of get a basic grasp of budgeting, you should be able to handle the grant writing, or tailor we sorry work that into your grant writing. So I was like, okay, I can at least handle some budgeting on a very basic level, so we're good there. So
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Thank you. So, you just landed a job.
mhm,
Congratulations. I
thank
would
you.
love to hear more about it. And then I'd also love to hear kind of your pathway to finding that job. Why did you choose to look for full-time employment versus going the freelancing route? Kind of that, yeah, that journey.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I ran into that nonprofit consultant. San Antonio, we're seventh largest in the nation. We do have a lot of nonprofits in the area, and especially in a rural area, because South Texas, there are a lot of rural communities. So a lot of kind of grant writing or nonprofits are based in San Antonio, but they serve a rural population, or
Okay.
it kind of serves as a hub for all those rural communities. And so she had mentioned, there's a huge need. The one ghostwriting client I did get had said, well, there's a huge need for it here as well. I can put you in touch with some other
Amazing.
people there. And so that was a huge help. Um, but before I felt like I could really pursue that, I felt I needed kind of to get my feet wet.
Yeah.
I'd really only written one grant, and that was back when I was a teacher, probably like 8 years ago.
Okay.
Now that I realize that was a long time ago. But it was just something I did real quick. I think it was like an Apple education grant. You just filled out an online application, and that was it. I didn't put a lot of thought into it. I didn't think much of it at the time. So I was like, well, I don't really consider that experience, and I don't want to, say, well, I've written one grant. So I felt I needed to get more of that experience and that credibility. And so I had been looking at the Unicorn Grant Writing Collective for some time, actually, before I finally pulled the trigger,
Yeah.
mostly because of the pandemic, to be honest. Everything was just kind of in a standstill. I wanted to see where things were going. Of course, I wasn't really in a position vocationally or with my family that I felt I could make that commitment, but I knew I needed to do something. I needed to be able
Yeah.
to move, and to try other things. And so, really reading more the posts you guys put out, your free content, helped keep that top of mind for me, obviously, to build kind of that confidence to move forward, and then to really make that commitment. In January, actually, of this year is when I was finally able to sign up for the course and to get that going. And then, of course, learning from that, how to look for informational interviews, reach out to people, start that process there, really helped me get
Cool.
that started, get the ball rolling. And then, of course, I reached back out to the nonprofit consultant. She has connections to all these
Yeah.
nonprofits as well.
A super
And
connector.
yeah, so yeah, that was probably one of the other things that either you or Meredith had mentioned, is find a super connector. And so she was a huge help. So I would suggest that to anyone looking there,
Yeah.
not just super connector in the broad sense, but a nonprofit consultant, because they're usually going to have those connections. And if you're near a big city, there's got to be at least one of those
I think so.
there. So
Yeah.
that's somewhere to start for somebody
That's
who's
great
looking
advice.
into it. And then San Antonio, we have a nonprofit council. It's
Okay.
kind of like a loose collection of all these nonprofits, but they kind of work together, and there's a council that helps do a lot of fundraising. And so through my connections, I was able to connect to the CEO there, and they have a weekly job email that they send out specifically for nonprofit jobs.
Sweet.
And some of the jobs are, executive director or management or bookkeeping, but every now and then you get a grant coordinator, or grant manager, or grant writer. And so I applied, and then of course I let my connections know I had applied for this job. And so they were
Very
like, well,
smart.
yeah, so they're like,
Yeah.
we'll help you, we'll put in a good word for you. I was like, thank you so much. And of course I was able to get a couple interviews with Project Men, which is now more where I'm working. And I was really enthusiastic about it. I'm like, I really want to try. I want to do all these things here. And not only that, I went and actually started researching what kind of grants I could find for them. Not
Oh,
spending a lot of
amazing.
time really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like an hour or two, really just kind of reading over some grants. And so when I went back for my second interview, I said, well, I've got about 5 or 6 grants that kind of, look like they could align. Maybe not, but at least, it would give you an idea of where to go. And so I think that, and of course my connections and all that kind of really put me over the top. So not really one thing, but a lot of those little things together. So
I love that. Like, what a killer edge to be like, not only did I come to this interview prepared to answer questions and to do all the things, but I've already researched grant opportunities for you. This is how I'm going to approach being in this job. It allows them to even kind of date you for a second and say, like, oh, yeah, he does good work. Oh, I love that. That is such good advice for anyone looking for really any job, but a grant writing job. That's amazing. So tell me about what's your title? What do you do? You're like, what, a month into a month and a half?
yeah, about a month and a half.
Okay.
I guess I officially started the day after Labor Day.
Okay.
And then I had like training, and part of
Yeah.
that was, they wanted me to see every piece of that nonprofit and how that worked.
Oh, very
So of course,
cool.
how I can fit into there. So part of that process was asking, each person, what can I do as a grant writer to help you? And of course, a lot of it really came down to general operating funds,
Okay.
because we're a very niche nonprofit. What we do is we take donated medical equipment, refurbish it, sanitize it, and then distribute it out to people in need who either
Oh,
can't pay for it, don't have access to it, for various reasons. And so really all they end up paying is like $20 out of pocket for an application fee, but then they can get a hospital bed or a wheelchair or, just different medical equipment either delivered to them, the delivery fee is,
Yeah,
there's a delivery fee, or they come pick it up. So, we're
that's
really doing a
incredible.
service to our community here in San Antonio. And, given that we're a large city, there are a lot of people who need it.
And we're still on the heels of this pandemic. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure that the need is greater now than it
Mhm.
even was before 2020.
Yeah. So then as a grant writer, on top of, knowing how the organization works and kind of our needs and
Mhm.
the unique challenges that we have as a nonprofit, is finding those grants. So the grant researching, that I learned through you guys has been a huge help.
Good.
Not just, looking for grants per se, because it's easy to say, well, I'm looking for grants, when really you could just Google grants.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that. It's looking for alignment. It's looking for those types of organizations that want to support what you do,
Yeah.
but also that will have the funding in place to do it, I guess I should say.
Mhm.
Because you could look at health organizations, but a lot of them are talking about specifically research or
Okay.
mental health or behavioral health. And
Mhm.
while we are a health organization or a community service, what we're really doing is providing medical equipment. And so it's finding those niches there. And then of
Yeah.
course, writing those narratives, filling out applications, because every grant organization has a different application process. They may use like the same portal, but of course they're going to put different questions in there. So you got to know how to work all of that. So you got to know about 80 different things for 80 different grants. So that's always fun.
Which is
And
why
then
project management is so crucial.
yes, which is why, like, actually before I started officially on the job, I went back and rewatched those project management
Awesome.
modules again and again to hopefully get those processes down in my brain, so that way when I
Yeah.
I got there, it was kind of a second nature. Now I'm still figuring out that process as it pertains to project man and how I work there
Mm.
uniquely. So there's that. But then also keeping track of reports. That we have a finance manager, so I have to let her know when a report is due and give her enough time to put that together. So part back to that project management,
Yeah.
obviously, but just keeping track of all the little pieces for all these little things. And sometimes it's just writing all those little grants, because we do I want to say like 10 to 15 small grants of like
Okay.
5 to 10,000 each. So
Okay.
those are quick,
Yeah.
but it's just you got to do a lot of them and stay on top of it. So
Yeah. That's so exciting. So you sound like you've already submitted grants on behalf of them then.
yes, I have. I want to say about 5 now. I really should
Oh my
keep better
gosh.
better track of it. I then that's part of my learning curve, is figuring out how to track that and to
Mm-hmm.
stay on top of it in a way that's efficient, and then also some other way so that if something were to happen to me, God forbid,
Yeah.
somebody can come in and be like, okay, where did Kyle leave off, and where can I
Yeah.
pick up on
Well, I
that?
would be really curious as you develop systems for what that looks like, right? I don't know if you'll continue to use Asana like we teach in the course, or if you'll use something else. But as you kind of progress and figure out those systems, we would love to see what you're doing
Definitely, yeah.
to
So
help
if
other
you do
people
want to
in similar
follow up
positions.
with me later,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Uh-huh.
I'll try and remember to make a note or reminder later, so I
I would
can
definitely.
hopefully circle back. But
Yeah.
right now it's still just a lot
Oh,
of
you're so
lot of
learning.
learning.
Yeah.
And then funny story, the woman who helped hire me, because I interviewed with the director of development and then the CEO. Well, the
Mhm.
director of development, she went and got another job
Oh
and
no.
left at the end of last month. So then I'm waiting for her replacement to start. So I still feel like I'm kind of in this,
Yeah.
you know, learning phase,
Uh-huh.
limbo, what's going to happen.
Yep.
So when the new person comes on, I've got to figure out how she wants to run things, her processes, and then
Mhm.
where I fit into that. So I guess I've had about 3 or 4 starts in the
Yeah.
last month or two that I'm adjusting to.
Keeping you on your toes.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. So, what is your proudest accomplishment this far in your grant writing journey?
Getting this job, I would say, just getting this job.
Yeah, that's awesome. What did you do to celebrate?
Well, we have Chick-fil-A here. I don't know if a lot of
Right.
people know Chick-fil-A. Yeah. But in the summer they have a peach milkshake, and I always try and get at least one peach milkshake a summer. So I went in and got myself a peach milkshake, and stayed home and I watched a couple movies that I wanted to watch. Not really
Yeah.
deep movies, but more action packed, blow them up.
Mhm, mhm.
Just had a nice afternoon for myself. And then when
Yeah.
my family came home, I got to share the news with them.
Oh, I bet they were so stoked.
My wife cried. My wife cried.
What a beautiful moment. Oh, I'm so excited. So what are some key takeaways that from learning with us?
The project management for one, specifically, because it's great to be writing and doing all that, but if you can't keep it organized, you're really going to be wasting a lot of energy there.
Mhm.
The funding research, which is
Yeah.
huge, even as a freelancer, that's a great way to get into nonprofits and to show your value and what you can do to help them, and build that experience. But then as a full-time grant writer, that's something that I'm doing. I mean, earlier today I was looking up grants and then trying to put together kind of a report for my CEO to tell her, okay, here's some grants that I found, give me your feedback, go,
Mhm,
no go.
mhm, mhm. That's awesome. Yeah, so cool. I'm so glad that it works in the freelancing space and then also moves directly into the job. It has to feel really nice to be able to provide strategy to a CEO,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And it gives me a level of comfort knowing that
Good.
before I started, instead of having to pick that up.
Mhm.
So now I feel my questions are a little more high level. Instead
Yeah.
of what do I do, it's okay, what do we do specifically here, which
Yes.
I feel is
Yeah,
much
I
more
love that.
um, time efficient.
Cool. Yay, that has to be a good feeling. So did you have a couple of freelance clients before you landed the job?
I had one specifically. It was a
Mhm.
small after school education nonprofit. I
Cool.
did a funding research project for them. And that took about a month and a half.
Okay.
And I came up with about five grants that worked for them, and they were able to input that into their grant writing
Cool.
strategy, or their funding strategy, I should say.
Yeah.
And then I was an office manager before I took this job, and they were trying to do a grant for a specific project.
Okay.
So they were going to a foundation to get money for kind of this augmented reality thing. And
Mhm,
then they were
mhm.
going to donate that to a small city
Okay.
for them to use in their tourism or their marketing. So I was part of the grant writing specifically for that, which was great.
Yeah.
So not necessarily freelance. It was just it was a
Mhm.
side project for my job, but I
Yeah.
was able to kind of use that experience when I came to interview for this one and say, hey, look, I've actually written a grant. I don't know if
Yeah.
they got it. I don't know if we got it, but I would say, hey, look, I wrote a
Yeah.
grant. So
Yes. And you had the funding research to back up
yes.
on too. So that's awesome. Very cool. So what would you tell someone considering joining the Grant Writing Unicorn Collective?
It's a lot of fun. It's a way to, of course, get your feet wet and build that credibility, and get comfortable with the process, because you're going to have to learn a lot, obviously, but it
Mhm.
points you in the right direction at least. And so you can leverage that, which is great. You can say,
Yeah.
I've learned these skills. I know how to help you specifically with your funding here,
Mhm.
there, in these specific instances. So, it's a great tool, but of course that alone is not going to get you there. You still have to put in the time and effort of connecting with nonprofits,
Mhm.
nonprofit consultants, um, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a huge advantage. I don't feel I could have gotten this job if I hadn't gone through the collective, which the connections were obviously integral to that. The motivation was obviously integral, but I feel that without this extra piece,
Mhm.
it still wouldn't have happened.
Oh, thank you. So if there's one thing we could do to continue serving you, what would it be?
Honestly, right now I'm still kind of figuring it out, so I feel I'm just developing that skill set. So kind
Yeah.
of going through, the practice, doing the motions again and again.
Mhm.
So right now, I guess I would just say project management, just helping with the project management side of it,
Yeah.
specifically. But down the road, I am hoping, because I know Anna Tuhig. Did I say her name right? Anna
Say
Tuhig.
again. Oh, Anna, yeah, Anna Tuig.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
Anna Tuig. She's working with engineering companies, and I would
Oh,
like to do
cool.
that sometime down the road.
Yeah.
But I still see that as far off. So I mean, maybe with that, but I know that's kind of a very specific thing. So right now, I guess I would just say project management.
Yeah, awesome. Well, as always, as you come up with really different problems, right? You're exposed to now a ton of different things. Um, Come to us and ask us project management questions, and like, let's help you figure out some systems that work for you in this job. I would love to partner with you on any of those systems. So yeah,
Definitely. Definitely.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else that you would want to share with the world of YouTube listeners out there?
I mean, just what I've said already, just go for it. You won't know unless you try. And it took me a while to get to here. So I guess there's those people who may have just started and are feeling like it's not really working. But I mean, just keep at it, and it'll come around for you, because not everyone's story is the same. So
Yeah.
don't worry that, maybe I got a job, 8 months after starting the course, and you still haven't gotten a job, but your story's different and you'll probably end up with a better job than mine. So just keep at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.